Aloha and welcome to A Course in Miracles, the workbook for students. We're on lesson 60. And this is the last 5 lessons in the review of the first 50 lessons that we've been reviewing, 5 at a time, each day. And yesterday, if you remember, we started off with the idea that God goes with me everywhere I go. I'm not separate from God, but God is with me, inseparable from me wherever I go. So from out of that idea, God is my strength and vision is His gift. So these things are with me here in the now. God is my source. I cannot see apart from Him or have this vision of Christ that we thought about and meditated on yesterday. God is the light in which I see. And God is the mind with which I think. So today the idea is flowing in that same vein of thought of God going with me everywhere I go, God being a part of me, being one with God. And because that's so, God is also the love with which I forgive. And just let me say a few words about forgiveness. We have an idea or think oftentimes that we know what forgiveness is and that we've forgiven other people. But the Course has a totally different idea of the religious or the Christian idea of forgiveness, where another person has wronged you and you feel wronged and you're going to, out of obedience to Christ or because you think you're holy or it's been commanded or whatever, you want to get to heaven, but for whatever idea, you decide that you're going to let this person off the hook from what they've done to you. And also it's the kind of idea that the church taught, at least in the church I went to, about the idea of God's forgiveness and the grace of God. It was unmerited. It was undeserved. That, I'm a wretched sinner and God, because He's so great and loves so much, forgives us. But as we've already seen, God, or we're about to see, is God's never condemned us. So He doesn't see us that way. And so this idea of forgiveness that we're going to begin to take up in these lessons is at the very heart of this Course in Miracles, because it's based on the idea that you're always giving to yourself. So what if you want to feel forgiven, if you want to feel free from guilt, you can't hold guilt and condemnation and anger against another person, or otherwise you can't escape those feelings or that feeling condemned yourself. And so we will be angry at another person and hold them accountable, and they're guilty and they're sinners. And then we begin to feel guilty ourselves because we've just projected this condemnation onto ourselves because we are one. And so if we want to feel forgiven, we have to forgive what we think of is the other person, but in truth, we're always forgiving ourselves. So that's kind of just a highlight of what we're going to be looking at in the idea of forgiveness. But it's in God's love, not in our strength or in the ego's love, but in this our true self that's one with God, is in that love is where our forgiveness comes from. It says God does not forgive because He's never condemned. The blameless cannot blame. And those who have accepted their innocence see nothing to forgive. Yet, forgiveness is the means by which I will recognize my innocence. It is the reflection of God's love on earth. It will bring me near enough to heaven that the love of God can reach down to me and raise me up to my home. This is the last step that the Course often talks about. That we do our part, and then the last step is God's person to lift us up and raise us up to our home. So the next one, God is the strength in which I trust. It's not my own strength through which I forgive. It is through the strength of God in me that goes with me everywhere I go, which I am remembering as I forgive. So I'm remembering the strength in me of God's love that goes with me everywhere I go as I forgive. And as I begin to see, I recognize God's reflection on earth. I forgive all things because I feel the stirring of His strength in me. And I begin to remember the love I chose to forget, but which has not forgotten me. So the next one is that there is nothing to fear because God goes with me wherever I go. How safe the world will look to me when I can really see it. I'm just talking about seeing it with the vision of Christ. It will not look anything like what I imagine I see now. Everyone and everything I see will lean toward me to bless me. Not to attack me, but to bless me. I will recognize in everyone my dearest friend with a capital F. What could there be to fear in a world which I have forgiven and which has forgiven me? Nothing. Nothing to fear. And the next idea, God's voice speaks to me all through the day. There is not a moment in which God's voice ceases to call on my forgiveness to save me. There is not a moment in which His voice fails to direct my thoughts, guide my actions, and lead my feet. I am walking steadily on toward truth. There is nothing else, there is nowhere else that I can go, because God's voice is the only voice and the only God that has been given to His Son. And I don't know if you remember or not, when we first talked about this idea of the voice of God speaking to me throughout the day, we talked about how we perceive two voices. And one of them is the ego's voice, which is usually what we 99% of the time perceive as the voice speaking to us, leading us, guiding us, talking to us. But the Course tells us that God's voice is always, all throughout the day, speaking to us, leading us, guiding us. But we haven't really learned to hear it or perceive it and follow it. But that's what the Course is about. That's what these workbook lessons are about, is learning how to become still, how to discipline our minds so that we can hear that still small voice that hasn't left us, that's there speaking to us, that's not waiting for us to do anything or become holy or whatever, but it's always been there and is there right now, that all we have to do is learn how to hear it and to really listen. So God's voice speaking to me all through the day. And the last idea is I am sustained by the love of God. As I listen to God's voice, I am sustained by His love or her love. As I open my eyes, His love lights up the world for me to see. As I forgive, His love reminds me that His Son is sinless. As I look upon the world with the vision He has given me, I remember that I am His Son. I remember who I am. So as we go through this course, we need this vision. We need to hear this voice. And in order to get it, it's saying that we need to learn how to really get in touch with the God that goes with us wherever we go, so that out of that strength, out of that light, out of those thoughts, which are below our thoughts of the ego, out of that love, when we get in touch with it and experience it and let it express itself through us, we will remember God, and we will remember who we are, our true self. Not the false ego self, but our true self. So I hope you have fun today going over these last few lessons of the first 50 lessons. And I send you love, I send you peace, I send you aloha, and I will see you tomorrow.